Hi, welcome to another episode of Interesting and Sexy, a podcast dedicated to spreading the awareness and visibility of intersex people, as well as discussing issues/experiences about queer life being different and all things interesting and sexy. Thanks for coming back. I really appreciate those of you who are returning and enjoying this podcast. And if anyone is new listening to this for the first time, welcome. Lined up for today, we have someone who is doing some really powerful work for the intersex community. And as always, I'm going to let them explain everything and do all of the talking. But I would also really appreciate it if you watching this could subscribe to this channel. It allows me to keep doing this and hopefully one day funnel in more energy to make it bigger and better and to extend the longevity of this podcast. And yeah, doing things like subscribing and leaving a comment really helps. That would be really great if you could do this. But yeah, enjoy today's podcast and thanks again for watching. Hey Val, welcome to Interesting and Sexy. Thank you for coming here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm pumped to have you on because you reached out to me and you are doing something really epic at the moment, and I will let you talk about what you're doing in October. But before we do that, I would just like you to introduce yourself and tell us, who is Val, what are you about, and how do you identify?
Okay, well, hello, I am Val. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am intersex. I am a dog parent. I live in San Diego, California. I am one of the facilitators of Club Intersex, which is a community-run support group that's provided by the Los Angeles LGBT Center on Zoom. And also the moderator of the at Club Intersex Instagram account. I'm Sagittarius.
Wow.
Yeah, and I identify as a queer intersex person.
Awesome. But I would love to talk a little bit more about Club Intersex and like how that works. But first, would you like to just share your story, and you can talk about your variation or your diagnosis or anything like that? Do you just want to give us a little lowdown on your life? And
Sure. So I don't know about you, but the word intersex kind of came to me not through my experiences with doctors. I was diagnosed when I was 15 years old. That was some time ago in the early 2000s. It was a little bit different then, I think, with how people well, you know, first of all, the variation that I have is complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. And it's you know, maybe your viewers are familiar with it as a variation, but it means I have, you know, XY chromosomes. And I found that out through a series of events that were triggered by sports physical. I played field hockey in high school, and I had to get an annual physical every year to play. And I was a sophomore in high school. So my second year of high school, you know, the nurse asks that question that femme presenting people always get asked, you know, date of last menstruation.
Yeah.
And I said never, and didn't think anything of it because, you know, my older sister also hadn't gotten a period yet. And it's like, you know, you kind of gauge your sister as your like barometer. And so I thought we were just late bloomers, you know, and I guess that raised eyebrows. And so it triggered a series of follow-up visits, and they drew a lot of blood. And eventually I received the diagnosis of complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. So that was a long time ago. But I didn't actually find the intersex community until very recently, until
Oh yeah.
yeah, until 2020 actually. So
Whoa. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I live
even the word intersex didn't come to you?
no,
What? Really?
I know. It was, I think I had this you know, I experienced a lot of shame around this difference,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't even Google it. I wouldn't even
Mm-hmm.
I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like completely dissociated from the diagnosis. I was just like just, kind of wrapped it up and put it in a little box and just kind of stuffed it down because
Oh
as
yeah.
everyone else could tell, they look at me and read me as, a cisgender woman. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
why go out of the way to complicate things by burdening them with the nuanced reality of my existence and identity? I just recovering people pleaser, just like
Yeah.
let me just let people assume things about me. And so that was kind of the name of the game for me for a long time, was just passing and upholding that perception and that kind of visual, like all the cues of femininity and being a woman. And it worked, quote unquote, for for a while, but yeah, I know it's wild now to think about all those years that I was just completely denying that part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm.
but it wasn't until, believe it or not, yeah, 2020, when I actually learned that word. And it was through a very kind of um, just random series of events that it all kind of started around the summer of, George Floyd's murder, that period in the United
Yeah.
States,
Uh-huh.
the racial reckoning, or however it's kind of being characterized, but this period where, and it's also in the depths of like COVID lockdown, like everyone's very much isolated in their little home bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, working for this company, and they gave us this, allyship toolkit kind of like thing where it just had a bunch of, resources and suggestions. And one of them was to change up your social media feed, to start following. This is, for obviously for white people to become better allies to
Yeah.
people of color. And so one of them was to, yeah, change up your social media feed and follow more diverse people. And so I started to do that. I started to follow different um, activists, Black people, transgender people,
Mm.
Indigenous people, like all these
Mhm.
different, poets. And one of them happened to share a post of Pigeon Pagonis, which I
Mm.
don't know if is the
Yeah.
co-founder of Intersex Justice Project. And so the post, I really wish I would have saved it, but something about it caught my eye, and I went to Pigeon's page.
Yeah.
And then I saw, on the page somewhere, they were having a live conversation with Sean Saifa Wall, the other co-founder, one of the other co-founders of Intersex Justice Project. And
Mm.
in that Instagram live, they, kept throwing around the word intersex, but then at some point, one of them said androgen insensitivity syndrome. And
Oh
it
my
was like
God.
this weird moment where it was like, what? Like, because for up until that point, I really had kind of existed in this little universe where I knew of androgen insensitivity syndrome from the diagnosis I received, and, the endocrinologist I saw in secret for, a number of years.
Mhm.
And because, my sister, who was the late bloomer along with me,
Mm.
actually has the same mutation as me. And so
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
thought it was this genetic thing specific to our family. Like, I didn't realize that there was this word intersex that was being used to characterize this variation, this existence, and the entire community that goes along with it. And so began my journey, my, dive into the rabbit hole of intersex, social media content.
Mhm.
Uh, and through that, I found Club Intersex, which is the support group that, is co-founded by River Gaio, Jessica Booth, Seven Graham. And I ended up just going to a meeting, and yeah, just kind of, it's been, yeah, it's really been so life-changing to have
Mm.
support of
Mm-hmm.
community, and the way it has been so, integral to my own healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine where I would be now without that, and also how I went so long without it.
Yeah. Do you remember your first time going there and how that felt? Like, were you
Well,
nervous or?
so it is a Zoom-based group. So we
Yeah.
haven't, I've been to a couple of in-person, we've arranged little meetups where we get together, and that is really special when you're around just like a group of other intersex people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a vibe, it's just like it's so special to kind of be together in that way. But
Mm.
um, yeah, the first meeting, gosh, let me think about that. Well, the first like support group I went to was through Interconnect, which is another group, a nonprofit that's based in the United States, and they offer different support services, peer support groups. I think I actually like DM'd Pidge and like trauma dumped, like, oh my God, like, just going through my whole, and they were so sweet and said, hey, try Interconnect. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think
Mm-hmm.
Interconnect may have been the first place I went.
Mm.
I can't remember what my first meeting was like, but that's a good question. I wish I would have kind of like captured that in my mind a little bit more. But I just know that I felt safe and like supported and understood and seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, all those feelings that kind of escaped me for so long, just trying to like guess how other people walk through life and
Mm.
replicate that in
Mm-hmm.
my own body in a way
Yeah.
that's just like, doing it right. Am I girling? Like I never
Yeah.
really had a knack for, being the way other people thought I was.
Uh-huh.
So finding other intersex people, finding that community was um yeah, it was invigorating. It was really, really a positive, like beautiful change.
Mm-hmm. And the word intersex, did that kind of make sense for you and kind of piece things together in terms of your sense of being and identity and everything like that?
Yeah, totally. I really do think I embrace that term now. I feel comfortable claiming that for myself.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I actually like came out, I think it was in 2020. I think this year will be the 3-year anniversary of it. I, shared a video to Instagram where I kind of like, yeah, I told my story and came out about being intersex, because finding that community, those other people, um, made me want to just like announce it and like proclaim it and just say like, hey, I have a word for this. Like I've been this way the whole time, but you didn't know, but this is me. And so yeah, it
Mm.
really did help me to feel more confident about just embracing myself and accepting myself and not trying to change, things about myself or my, presentation or whatever, just feeling like, you know, like the shoulders drop, just kind of like
Mhm.
that sense of ease when you know that you're where you belong. And yeah, so it was like an arrival in a lot of ways, that um, finding that term and the community.
Mm-hmm. And meeting other people I know is just such a good feeling. And every time I speak to someone from America, I'm always like, it is popping off there. Like everyone is
Yeah.
so connected and it's really great. It's kind of like that in Australia as well, but I wasn't aware of it until honestly this year. Like I just didn't think that there was much Australian community, but there is now. And but we're all in like opposite. I don't know if it's like the same with you guys. You're all in different cities and all of this
I
stuff.
was gonna say, where are you in Australia?
So I'm in Melbourne and
Okay.
I only have like two or two or three people that I have just met this year that are intersex.
Good. I mean, that's a nice little squad.
Yeah, it is. But and also I'm going to my first Australian intersex meetup um in November, which is really exciting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I have been to one in America when I was 17. I went to the
Oh,
Interact um
oh, you did?
conference in
Yep.
Boston. And I
Uh-huh.
actually met Pigeon there. I don't know if they remember
God,
me, but I
that's amazing.
yeah, it was awesome. And but it made me just because
Coming all the way from Australia to
I know because we were
you must have
so
just been wide-eyed and all the other like energy because I mean, yeah, that's like two big things, like connecting with people and then also like flying across the globe to like what a trip for you.
yeah, it was awesome. But just like meeting everyone and but then I was like, oh, this is only happening in America. This is not happening in Australia, and I feel sad about it. But yeah, and I don't remember the exact time, like the exact moment when I first heard the word intersex, but I know it came like very, very quickly after my diagnosis, like still when I was like 16, 17, I think. So it's always interesting to talk to someone who that word came way later and
Yeah.
how much it changes.
Oh
Um
yeah.
but yeah, so your club intersex work,
Uh-huh.
I would love to just understand a little bit more in depth about how it started. I mean, your work there, I guess, and then also how it started in general. And then
Mhm.
also I would love you to talk about, what's going on in October.
Yeah. So Club Intersex was co-founded by River Gaio, Jessica Booth, and Seven Graham in March of 2021. And I think my first meeting was like May, or I think it was like one of the, first meetings where I joined. And I found it through, I started following, my social media feed was just blooming of no pun intended, all these different sex people once I started to go down that rabbit hole. And I found River, and River, shared a post about this group that was starting. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to like join. And so I DM'd them and they sent me a link. And I and then so it's a community run group, and the LA LGBT Center is amazing, and they're also doing a lot of important work for developing a primary care clinic for intersex adults, which is huge.
Wow.
It's very exciting. I've been a patient consultant on that for a couple
Whoa.
of years now, where yeah, because as you know, as an adult, finding intersex competent like primary care is impossible. It's, yeah, you can't do it. But Dr. Ward Carpenter, I think, met Seven and somehow connected with Seven, one of the co-founders, about, his journey with, transitioning and his intersex history, and just kind of like fell in love with the cause and wanted to do something about it. And so they started, developing this clinic. And then also River, Jessica, and Seven created this, because the LA Center has a variety of different social networking groups for all kinds of members of the queer community. There's, trans lounge, there's one for bisexual folks, there's one for disabled queer folks, there's just all kinds of different groups. And so they added Club Intersex to that list.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's kind of a little different about it is, the center has a staff where they can perhaps, assign someone to be a facilitator for a group of, because they have folks who have a variety of identities, like bisexual, like transgender, like, gay men. But with intersex, there's not a whole lot of us out there who are like active. And so we say it's
Mm-hmm.
community run because it literally is the community that keeps it going. We have
Yeah.
people, because it feels safer. The consensus we've gotten from members is that we don't want a non-intersex person facilitating meetings,
Mm,
because it's a space for intersex people to
absolutely.
share their experience and their their struggles, their hope, their, everything that goes with just living this life, and so we rely on folks to volunteer to, host meetings. And sometimes, people will come with different activities. We'll do like maybe breath work and meditation and journaling, and we had a trivia night, we've had like talent shows, we just do all kinds of different but then we also just have general, like, open shares, like where people can just talk about what, things they're going through. And yeah, so at some point or in late 2021, the different co-founders started to pursue different River is a bona fide, they're kind of a star at this point, right? They were working on Pony Boy, the feature film, and other, acting and modeling jobs. They were in the process of filming the documentary that has since been released, Everybody.
Yeah.
Jessica is at that time, she just graduated. She was going to UCLA studying microbiology. She's like working her way towards med school to be an intersex endocrinologist, which we love.
What?
Yeah, and then
Nice.
Seven is pursuing, stand-up comedy and acting. And so they all kind of had these other things that they were, more active in. And I kind of like picked up the the mantle of Club Intersex and started to, kind of administer and manage it and facilitate it, and just engage the different community members to, like I said, chip in with hosting. And yeah, and at some point we started the Instagram account because, why not? So we started, yeah, when did I start that? In I think late 2021, but I didn't really like post on it. It was, just kind of here and there I would come up with like a funny, like a meme or something like that, or you know, so it kind of started, it's been a very slow burn. And this year actually one of our members, Jeremiah Ripley, did a series on their Instagram this year called I think it was Queer Artist of the Day during June Pride Month, where each day he featured a different, model or actor or, singer, like that was queer. And it was very like, it was a cool looking kind of presentation. And I thought, God, that's so cool. Like all month long, every day there was a new post about somebody and you were learning about their work. And I thought of Intersex Awareness Day, which is in the month of October, right? October 26th. And the last couple of years, I've become more active in that on that day, whether it's doing a podcast conversation or an Instagram live. Or I've been a part of Intersex Awareness, which is a grassroots activist group that has put out this action they do each year where we go out and we put up posters in our cities that have intersex art on the night of October 25th, so that on October 26th there's posters all over there's all kinds of cities that participate.
Cool.
So yeah, it's cool that like this one day, but it just feels like so you're trying to do, so I say you, an intersex person, or some intersex people choose to like participate. I know there are some people who just kind of like retreat because it's like it's a lot to all of a sudden like be that on for like 12 hours and just kind of like trying to uplift all these different issues and people. And so I said, well, what if instead of one day we did Intersex Awareness Month? And so the whole month of October at Club Intersex, we've been featuring different members of the intersex community on each day. So it's been super cool to learn more about all these different there's so many, obviously. I reached out to a lot of different groups. I also tried to get other groups in different countries, but the language, I used Google Translate where I could, but yeah, it's just been cool to like, but there are so many groups in so many different countries, and there's just so much to dig into. But it's been really cool to just share that and hopefully just bring a little bit of joy to the community to see, because I think that was one thing that I struggled with all those years where I wasn't out, where I didn't have that word, was this isolation that comes with feeling like there's no one else, feeling like no one knows what my experience is like, nobody knows what I'm going through. And so to think of like someone out there, sharing this, like, oh my God, this is like, I'm just thinking like, what if somebody else has that pigeon moment from something on Club Intersex, right? Like that
Yeah.
post gets reshared and reshared, and then someone somewhere is coming across that, that's the hope that
Yeah.
it can just reach people, whether intersex or not, and give them a little bit more information. But also, as you know, through doing this podcast, I'm sure you've interviewed all these different types of intersex people that, everyone has their own story and experience and background and other intersectional identities. And so getting to kind of like showcase that, that's how I found you, was through that research of like, who's this podcaster in Australia?
Yeah. Because like everyone is so multifaceted and just diverse because, although we do have something that's very commonly tying us, which I guess shapes you in a way as a human being. So automatically people have like a lot in common. But because there's millions and millions and millions of us, we're of course going to be diverse, and we're of course going to be completely different people with different experiences. And it is important just to be able to see other intersex people thriving and to kind of have that to look up to and to relate to. And yeah, to see lots of different intersex people, because we're just people and we're just doing our thing and we're just living our lives and it's totally normal. And yeah, like I say that it's always a dream to just see successful intersex people in all fields across the board. And I love that this person you're talking about is becoming an intersex endocrinologist, which, oh my God, is just so well needed. I wish I had the mental capacity to study medicine or something like that, because I would do it, but I don't.
No, for real. She's fighting the good fight. I'm like, so yeah, she's great.
Yeah. And like this whole concept of having an intersex awareness month, I think, is so fair and valid, because again, there are so many of us and it was so silenced for so long. And I think just now and in the future, I think very soon it's kind of on its uphill in terms of visibility and everything. And then having a whole month where you can celebrate that diversity is just really exciting. So I hope that we can make this stick if we just keep doing this every year.
I know. Somebody else, I've already, and I think other organizations I've seen have used, the hashtag before. But it's definitely something that I hope that we can continue, because Intersex Awareness Day, of course, commemorates the first public demonstration of a group of activists at a pediatric convention in Boston in, I want to say it was 1996, and for the first time, just kind of publicly demonstrating and taking up space and calling out the harm that had been perpetrated on them as babies. And so it's important to honor that, history. And but I feel like, and I don't want to speak for the whole community, of course, but like it feels as if the day has taken on so many other forms or purposes, that I like the idea of giving us a whole month to just kind of like, play a little jazz. Like we can, one day we can, like, there's memes and we can laugh, and another day we can kind of like reflect on, someone's, experience, and just kind of taking it in a lot of different directions, because I think that's one of the biggest barriers to getting people in general who aren't intersex to be concerned about our struggles and our, the collective plight of intersex people, is just lack of education, lack of understanding, not knowing, I as an intersex person didn't know that word, and like didn't know all the other variations and all the other problems that people deal with. And so hopefully, yeah, that, something like this, some kind of campaign like this can just, yeah, reach other people and get them curious about that. And particularly, I don't know how, I'm not dialed in on politics in Australia, but I know wasn't there a big vote yesterday or today on a big.
Yeah, so there was a referendum for
Yeah.
the Indigenous Australians to have a collective voice in Parliament,
Yeah.
but it was an overwhelming no, which I think, was a little disheartening for a lot of people. And, it was just this really complicated thing that like a lot, technically, I don't even know, white people should not even be voting about something like that. It should just be the Indigenous people because it is only affecting them. But I think it was, yeah, disappointing for a lot of people, and I was kind of surprised that it was a no,
Yeah.
but a lot of people said that it wasn't surprising. But
Yeah, I was saying, like, politics here, like there's a lot of, we have 50 states, and of course, our government system is anything but, well, functional most of all, but like logical, and like, so each state has its own legislature and passes its own laws, and even at the local, like, city or county regional level, there's other laws. And so there's just been this like proliferation of bills and laws that are put forward. Not all of them pass and go into effect, but a lot of people out there are putting out bills that are targeting specifically transgender people, the queer community in general, things like, book bans. There's all this stuff that's happening where gender identity, gender expression is coming into the forefront. And it's been wild to kind of, like, as someone who was, quietly closeted about my intersex identity for most of my life, just trying to pass as cisgender, and then all of a sudden see all these bills passing where you see these, politicians that are, just talking about biological sex, and like, things, all of a sudden these things get trotted out where it's just like, yeah, it's terrifying, and it's really hard to watch. And yeah, I forgot where I was going, like with I forgot where I was going with that point, but yeah, it's been a very difficult few years for the queer community, for the transgender community, but also like the intersex community, because we are also being impacted by some of these bills, and the language that's used in them often completely erases us, or doesn't really, or specifically like carves out exceptions that says, yeah, but intersex people, we can still operate on them, like that kind of
yeah.
thing. So is there anything like that afoot in Australia, or?
So they have just passed legislation in our capital state territory, whatever it is, the ACT, that makes it you're not allowed to operate on intersex children anymore until they're able to like have consent. So that's amazing. And
Yes.
I'm just waiting for the rest of Australia to catch up now, because it's great that the ACT has done it. But I think from what I know, especially states like Queensland, and then apparently also in Victoria as well, it's being said that top surgeons and stuff are saying that they don't do these kind of surgeries anymore unless it's really desperately affecting their health, and it's like an immediate thing that they have to do. But then apparently with some investigation, the intersex community in Australia has found out that that's not true, and these surgeries are still being performed unnecessarily. So yeah, the legislation in the ACT is, it's, if it's not necessary for like the immediate health of the child, then you can't do it without consent and stuff. So it's amazing. But I also just wanted to dial in. There was like a few things that I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. So I'm going to try and remember what I wanted to talk about. There was one thing, but before I remember that, I just wanted to like go in a little bit more about, I haven't really like delved into this topic that much, but you know, why is it that you just can't get good care as an adult or anyone who you don't really get recommended to anyone? At least when you're a child, you get recommended to a like pediatric specialist. But then when you're adult, it's like once you come of age, they just send you on your way and you're out into the world.
Good luck.
And I guess a lot of people don't, you know, they don't know about that and they don't know why that is. And I mean, I don't know why either, but.
Yeah, I wish I had. I do know that, you know, in this month I've actually spoken to a couple of like amazing allies who are current medical students. So I know that there are people out there who are advocating and, you know, doing work within, you know, the medical student, you know, surgical kind of community to speak up about the fact that we exist. Because I've heard from a couple sources that the amount of, you know, education or instruction that medical students get is an hour or so, like it's nothing. And so it's there's just an absolute dearth of knowledge on how to, and of course there's so many different, it makes sense, right? There's so many different variations that I mean, it would be a challenge to be, you know, I can't imagine how a doctor could specialize in every intersex variation. That would be a lot of work on its own. But it is shocking that, you know, for centuries that, you know, intersex people have just kind of had to accept the fact that our healthcare is subpar, and that, you know, certain things, I think there's common understandings of like people with complete androgen insensitivity are more prone to osteoporosis and bone, you know, thinning, which I've since kind of like recognized in myself, having gotten a couple of bone density scans. So there's some things I think that people kind of are aware of what to look out for. But yeah, it is sad to think that there are potentially so many things that could be addressed or resolved with just simple like preventative measure, or, you know, primary care that kind of says, hey, you're going to need X, Y, and Z to, you know, address, you know, A, B, and C kind of thing. Like, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, like, right. Like this idea that a doctor, like diabetes, knowing how to treat diabetes, you got to, you know, exercise. And like, if what a world to live in where a doctor would just know how to provide that kind of care and guidance to an intersex patient to help them live their life, you know, fully and healthily. You know, setting aside, of course, the horrible like trauma that most intersex people experience in the medical establishment, in, you know, exam rooms, in, you know, so it is kind of a weird, you know, duality of like having been so like harmed and, you know, having gone through, I'll speak for myself, just like what I, you know, and I didn't even realize it was medical trauma again until I started like digging into the whole intersex community identity thing, but like putting my finger on it, like, oh, that's why I hate going to the doctor. Like, and it is weird to think of that, like, you know, how revered physicians are. And of course, you know, the work that doctors do is, it's life-saving, but then to also experience harm as a patient, but not have this platform to really like share that and let people know that like, hey, you know, doctors can also, you know, do some fucked up stuff too sometimes, like, but also, yeah, just the fact that there is no competent care that's really available. And I've seen in the States, there have been a couple of like surveys that have gone out where it's hilarious because they're just trying to collect like they're just aggregating data of like, are you intersex? What was it like going to the doctor? Like, tell us about that. Maybe we should poke around here and figure out what's going on. Like, they weren't even asking. It didn't feel like they were just asking for narrative responses of like,
Mm.
and it's like, how are you going to take all this data from all these intersex people and like turn it into a policy? I don't know, but like, so it
Mm-hmm.
feels like there are some, Kimberly Zieselman, one of the people I featured, is working with the Biden administration currently, and
Oh.
yeah, she's with the State Department, the special envoy for LGBTQI rights, and so she's been, trying to, get it. She's got a seat at the table now. So there's somebody advocating for our inclusion and conversations about, equity for health access to healthcare and competent healthcare.
Mm.
But yeah, it is sad to think of like what things could go unnoticed just because doctors don't know basic, fundamentals about like certain intersex variations. Like, what
Mm.
if there was something that could be easily done to avoid something, but because they don't even know, we're not being told to do that. And so then 10-15 years down the road, it's like, oh, now it's a lot worse,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so we just got to kind of cross our fingers and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Like I don't know if you saw on my Instagram, I still have my testes and I got them
Yes,
scanned the
I
other
love
day.
that. I love that video. That was
Yeah.
great.
And I just was like, every time that I've gone to get my testes scanned, I've had to like explain to this person. And I actually called ahead this time. I was calling around trying to find like a place. And I was basically like, look, I've got trauma from coming to see sonographers. So I just want to make sure you guys aren't going to give me any trauma. Like I was really just like calling these people up and saying this. And then I called this one person. They're like, "Oh, okay, we'll make sure like our head sonographer is here. Like she's female, like blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay, all right. We'll tell her that this is what I have, and maybe to like do a little bit of research first, so that I don't have to go in there and explain everything like this." And they're like, "Okay,
Uh-huh.
okay." Then I went in and she just had no idea when I when when I was in there. She was nice, but the fact that she couldn't find one is just a bit ridiculous, to be honest. Like, and I just have to get this done like every year. Well, I don't get it done every year because I just am too afraid. But every time
Yeah.
I'm like, I should probably get that checked out. And then I go, and then one is not there, and I'm like, what does that mean? And like, what does it mean that you can't find one? Has it gone? Has it moved somewhere? Is it like floating around? Like, no one has the answers. And I'm trying to get onto the pediatric gynecologist that I've been seeing ever since I was 16, because I she is the one, she's not the person who diagnosed me, so to say, but I was referred to her afterwards, and she was really, really great. And I was seeing her all the time when I was a teenager, but now like she's a pediatric specialist, but I'm still like trying, but she's like one of the top ones in Australia, so she's really hard to get to. So I
Mm.
have, if I have a question for her, I have to like call her person, and then I have to wait until she has time to like give me a quick call, and I'm just waiting for her call, and I'm like, they couldn't find one. What does that mean? And like, what do I do now?
Uh,
And it's just, yeah, it's just annoying. Like, I just want having like a center or something like that for intersex people where you
oh,
could just go to. It's like, God,
yeah.
I want that. I need that. So does everyone
That
else.
would be incredible. I mean, what a vision to put out into the universe. I love that idea. And yeah, like when you said that, like the doctor that we were diagnosed by, like when I got that diagnosis, I was still on my parents' insurance at the time, because here in the States, healthcare is a cluster and usually tied to your employer. Or there's state options if you're below a certain income level or unemployed. But so I was on my parents' insurance, and they referred me to this endocrinologist who typically he specializes in childhood diabetes. And I was like, he yeah, I guess just like a bonus patient. Yeah, but he seemed to be aware of this variation. And so it is interesting that the focus seems to be on pediatric care, and of course the operations and um all that. But like, not in adult primary care. It's really, and also just, mental health or lack thereof, and like, or the mental health care / support. And I feel like that's why, groups like Club Intersex or Interconnect, the support groups they provide, or other, I'm sure there's other LGBT centers or groups out there that provide these kinds of peer community support groups to help people deal with the things that they encounter, that they've experienced but maybe never really dealt with. But it is also one of the challenges about being a facilitator is I'm not a trained professional. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a mental health provider. I'm trying my best. It's you want to be sensitive to other people in the meeting, but you also want to hold space for what people are sharing and going through. And so it's but that's another need I think our community has, is just lack of mental health support that really understands that experience and that background. I started going to therapy after I kind of came into community. Like, it was a whole paradigm shift for me, and I found a therapist who she worked with a lot of transgender patients, and she was really special. Like, I'm really glad I found her. She ended up being a very like meaningful, special relationship as a therapist. I mean, like, I unlocked a lot of stuff. I worked through a lot of things. And I just think of like, wow, what if I had done this like 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Like, it's I hope that that's being made available more to young intersex kids as they're being, because like I said, when I was diagnosed, it was different. Now kids are, people, you can test for this stuff in the womb. Like, people are getting diagnosed, or babies are being diagnosed while the person's still pregnant and carrying, the fetus. So it's a whole different landscape now. But also I feel like parents, it's like the millennials are becoming parents, right? And we're a little more like, doing research and stuff, like, boomer parent, like, it was a different time, so it's the different values and approaches to, emotional, kind of support and things like that. So hopefully, with this trend to being more aware of that need for that specific type of care and support, people can address these things earlier in life instead of carrying them with them for many years and then letting them turn into other issues in adulthood that you then need to like resolve and address, hopefully before they, get you in any kind of like trouble or anything like that. But I feel like that's another big issue for, I know like the surgeries is like a big topic, but I think mental health is also just super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it does, for most people who are intersex, like you're going to have some sort of huge emotional tie to finding that out, or, processing that. And I think that people, like, we're not given the support really we need. Well, maybe now they are. I'm really not sure like
Right.
what's happening with youth right now in terms of
Right.
like, if I was how old I was, like 16, and I went to the doctor now, like how different would it be in terms of support and stuff. But I guess I should probably figure that out and do some investigating. At least
I mean, well, they also have like TikTok, right? And there's like, and social media, there's all these things that can, you know, so that's also been a game changer, I feel like, is having that democratization of information. I mean, of course, it comes with its own risks and perils, but like letting people discover and, go down their own rabbit holes about things, versus just kind of like dissociating and detaching and not really engaging with a diagnosis or a certain, or wanting to learn more about something. Like, now there are ways to at least inform yourself a little bit more easily. I know I had the internet at the time, but I was just so like, it was that was my journey. But what kids now, like are you on TikTok? Are you TikToking?
I am TikToking. I'm
All
TikToking
right.
away.
So I know there's a couple other intersexy folks out there who I'm still sitting that platform out. I don't know if I'm gonna get in the jump into the fray there, but I know that there's some cool content out there about, about being intersex. So
Yeah. Everything that you've said is just so awesome. And like, first of all, you're so eloquent and you speak so well. So
oh,
thank you
thank
for sharing everything.
you.
In closing, I guess I always like to just ask, where do you hope to see the intersex community going in the near future, and what are your aspirations in terms of awareness and representation and everything like this?
Ooh, where do I hope to see us going? Well, I think the most, I don't want to say the most, I think a very important topic that needs further, I think visibility and representation in media are kind of the next frontier. I think we really need to get more intersex stories told, portrayed by intersex people, but at least if not portrayed by intersex people, at least written by intersex people. And I know that there's, a couple out there, but I think that media is such an important component to informing culture and also just shaping views, so getting people to exposing people to certain experiences through, characters in film and TV,
Mm-hmm.
and that then eventually leading to, empathy and feeling a sense of like, compassion for that. And right now with the lack of representation, there is the only way people are going to come across intersex is like doing a Google search or like a friend, or there needs to be, I think it was Hans Lindahl, another intersex activist, who said that we haven't had our Laverne Cox moment yet, right? With the, with Orange is the New Black, and this, kind of this star coming on the scene, like the transgender community, and then Elliot Page and like these other, actors that are coming, that are, getting some roles, and
Yeah.
how it is for that group. And it's like, we've got River, we've got other, people who are working to, get, crack that nut. But I hope that that is something that can continue to expand, and also to um, really listen to intersex people of color more, to center their voices and experiences, because there's obviously a lot of other issues that those communities grapple with independent of being intersex. And so learning from them what else we can be doing to support them, and also work towards our kind of collective liberation is, I think, really important moving forward as we try to like build coalitions. Because right now I think trans intersex solidarity is something that's being, intersex awareness, this group that's that I mentioned earlier, that's the campaign they're promoting right now is intersex solidarity now with our, with our trans siblings. And so as we build these kind of coalitions, I think it's important to really listen to the groups that are the most marginalized, to let them lead the way. And yeah, I think those are two things I look forward to, being along for the ride and seeing where things go.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on again. Like, it was really nice talking to you and getting to know you, and I loved hearing everything that you had to say about everything going on. And I think the whole idea about Intersex Awareness Month is really important, and let's just make it a thing. It is a thing now, so
it's a thing. We did it. We're doing it. It's still, we still have a few weeks to go, but yeah, thank you.